Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Whoever Podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Andrew, and today we're reading from Mark chapter 9, starting in verse 42. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell where the fire never goes out. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell where the worms that eat them do not die and the fire is not quenched. Everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can you make it salty again? Have salt among yourselves and be at peace with each other.
Thanks. So just a little bit of context to catch you all up. Jesus has been going around teaching, healing, doing amazing things. And most recently, Peter confessed that Jesus is the Messiah. And so they know now that Jesus is indeed the one who is going to save and restore Israel. And Jesus now has been telling them that being the Messiah means that he's going to have to suffer. And so he's been teaching the disciples that, hey, following me, being a Christian, following Jesus, living God's way, means self-sacrifice. It means that you're putting others before yourself.
Yeah, so Jesus here, he tells this series of actions. He says, if this, then this, right? If your eye is causing you to sin, then you should pluck it out of your head and get rid of it, because it's better to not have an eye than it would be to continue sinning, right? When I was in Bible college, I was taught that this was hyperbole, right? That Jesus was exaggerating. But as I've read it many times over the many, many years it's been since I was in Bible college...
The first Bible... No.
It's true. It was stone tablets and scratching. I've realized it's not. Jesus literally means exactly what he's saying. He's saying, if your eye is the thing causing you to sin, then you should literally cut it out of your head and throw it away. Now, in no case is our eye the thing that's causing us to sin, but if we examine our life, there are things in our life that are causing us to sin. And Jesus is saying, with just as much sort of violence of purpose as it would take to pluck an eye out of your head, you should take the things in your life that are causing sin and you should remove them from your life.
So here's a great real-world example. Let's say that you struggle with something like pornography and looking at images like that on the internet or whatever. So for you then, what this passage might be saying is you should get rid of your phone, or you should get rid of your computer, or you should get rid of whatever social media account is leading to you. Whatever it is, you should get rid of it. Now, I recognize that is a huge sacrifice. But that's what Jesus is saying here. He's saying that sin is a really serious problem, and Jesus is trying to help us to overcome sin. And part of that is Jesus saying, hey, listen, you should get rid of whatever this thing is that's causing you to sin. Maybe another analogy of this would be if I was a friend of yours, or maybe let's say I'm the one who's just morbidly obese, right? I'm just very out of shape, not in I'm not eating well at all. I'm not doing any sort of exercise. At some point, as a friend, I would assume that Andrew or one of you watching would approach me and say, "Hey, I'm concerned about you. Can I help you? Maybe you might offer me a few things like, maybe you shouldn't go out to McDonald's all the time or something like that. But that's what Jesus is doing here. He's saying, listen, I have such a great plan for you, and I want you to be able to get rid of this sin in your life, and sometimes that means getting rid of something that we hold dear to us."
Jesus, just before that, he also talked about those of us who are looking to be teachers, who are looking to help people. And he says, if what you're doing in that capacity causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better if a large millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. Right? Jesus is making it very clear. You need to get sin out of your life, and you need to not be advocating for sin. If you're doing that, you should be very worried, because Jesus is saying the outcome of your misleading people, of your teaching people that sin is okay and that advocating for sin or excusing it is a really big problem. And if you are a leader in the church, or you're looking to help someone next to you, really examine your own beliefs and make sure that they're biblical, because if they're not, you're in danger of this.
Right, and the danger is real. We see that here. Jesus talks about where you go into hell, where the fire never goes out. And later he says that the worm that eat them do not die, and the fire is not quenched. So what Jesus is saying is, he's saying, yeah, it might be hard for you to give up whatever it is that's causing you to sin, or whatever it is that's causing you to stumble. Like, that's a sacrifice, and that might make life hard for the 60, 70, 80 years that you have here on earth. But living a harder life for 60, 70, 80 years is far better than having to live for eternity in a place like hell, like Jesus said, where the fire never goes out, the worm doesn't die. We did a whole episode on hell a long time ago as a Wonder Wednesday question. And that's what Jesus is getting at. He's like, listen, I know this is hard. I know this is not what you want to hear, but it's either this or you spend all of eternity forever in a place like this.
Yeah, so this passage, Jesus has been talking about sin, right? He's been approaching this from to some extent, the negative. Sin is bad, get it out of your life, don't teach people to do it. And at the end, he spins and he talks about it positively. He says, you shouldn't be sinning, rather live in the way that I have been teaching you to do, right? If you've been watching these in order, Jesus, for the last 9 chapters, has been teaching us the correct way to live. And he says, rather than sinning, live in this way that I've been teaching you to do, and be at peace with one another, right? He says, don't live that way. Don't teach people to live that way. Rather, live the way that I've been talking to you about.
Yeah, he's talking about the salt here too, and that's part of that living a different way. Salt is a different thing you put into food, and it generally makes the food better. And what Jesus is saying is, he's like, I'm calling you to live differently to help make this world a better place. And again, there's a sacrifice involved in that, but that's what Jesus is calling us to do here, and he's really encouraging us to do this for our own good. So I think that's maybe about all we got for this episode. But if you got any questions, feel free to comment below or reach out to one of us. Until then, we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks.